What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Swing Golf Podcast. Today we have I would say a veteran in the game in terms of writing and penning stories on some of the most pivotal moments in the golfing world. And I'll leave it up to Joy just to give us a short little intro into who he is and what he does.
Hey, thanks, Shan, for having me over here. And imperfect swing is what I have got. If it was perfect, I would have been playing, but I have to do all the writing instead. So my name is Joy Chakravarti. I'm from India. I'm now based in Dubai for the past almost 18 years, but I started out as a journalist, as a sports journalist in India in the early 1990s. Then got hooked to golf, which did not come normally to an Indian who was more into cricket. Golf was not that popular in India at that time, and I started as a cricket journalist, but once I started covering golf and I made a few friends, it was all over for cricket. So cricket's loss is golf's gain, I would say.
Yes, that's 100% correct. And funny enough, I was actually having a chat with someone yesterday, and I was commenting on the relationship we build over a round of golf in 5 hours. Is sometimes you almost build such a close relationship with someone versus someone you've known for years. You almost know more about a person after a round of golf than friends that you've known for years.
That's true. I mean, the greatest character revealer, they say, is a round of golf. I mean,
Yeah.
you are being refereed by yourself, especially when you are playing with friends, and what you do is shows just what you are. And so many, depending on what you're doing on the golf course, the other person can make so many judgments, so many, I won't say prejudices, because that's not a prejudice. It's all judgment, character judgment, and that will stay forever, because what the guy does over there is definitely going to do that in life as well.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting. Yeah, I found like a lot of the people that are close within my circle right now are people that I've played golf with and also started off that relationship with golf. So it's quite like you mentioned, it shows who you are, and if you want to know the true self, your true self as well, play a round of golf and you see how it goes. You mentioned your transition from cricket to golf. What was some of the challenges with that transition? You mentioned golf wasn't a big sport in India back then, but what kind of brought you over into the golfing world?
So I was a sports journalist in a newspaper called the Indian Express in Mumbai, and over there, Mumbai is one of the top 10 biggest cities in the world, and there are just 3 golf courses over there actually in the whole of Mumbai. So one of the golf courses, which is in a suburb called Chembur, and they used to have a few professional golf tournaments and other club tournaments, and I started going there. And my sports editor at that time, he told me that, listen, Joy, that was 1994 actually, and he told me that, Joy, I think you should pursue this sport because this is really growing. I mean, at that time, what had happened was there's this guy called Ali Sher in India, a professional golfer, who won the Indian Open, which was the only professional tournament which was there in India, twice, in 1991 and in 1993. So he won it twice. Nobody really expected an Indian to win a professional golf tournament at that time. There was no Jeev Milkha Singh, there was no Arjun Atwal or any of those players at that time as well.
Yeah.
And that really changed, that really got a bit of momentum into Indian golf. And my boss told me that, I think this sport is going to, become big in the country, and I think you should just, try to pick it up. So his name was Mr. Natarajan from Mumbai Indian Express, and he told me to go to the golf club and I would go there, and there was a professional tournament happening, and there were a lot of Indian professional players at that time playing over there, and I went there, and I'm pretty used to, I'm in cricket and cricketers, unlike your South African cricketers who are who were very professional at that time as well in 1993, 94, and who would say, okay, Joy, can we meet at 7 o'clock after the match? And before I would reach, somebody like Hansi Kronia or Sean Pollack would be at the meeting place waiting for me. I've never ever had that experience with an Indian cricketer, even at the club level. I've always been, if somebody says I'll come at 7 o'clock, they will come at 9 o'clock. Or they will say, in those days when there was no mobile, nothing, I would know at around 10 o'clock that he's actually not showing up for the interview.
Yeah.
So, all those things I've been used to as a cricket writer. And then I find this group of guys who were so good, I think one of the things that golf really instills in you is the time. You have to be on time, otherwise you get 2-stroke penalty to start with, and then disqualification. So I think they really realize the importance of, if you give someone the time, you should show up at that time. And there were these guys, guys like Jeev who had started to, earn a name for himself, and he would say that I'll be there at 6 and he will be there at 6. And, you speak to these guys and they were all so nice to talk to. You would think that these are superstars and nothing was off limit. You could ask them everything. You could ask them about the round of golf that they had. Everything that they would say would be true. And that was a fascinating experience for me when I started covering the sport. And when because there were not too many sports journalists, golf journalists over there in India at that time, when these golfers saw that this guy tries to follow a few players, they started taking interest in me. So what is a fade and what is a draw? All those kind of things were taught to me by some of the best professional golfers. They would take me and they would show me, this is fade, this is a draw. And I would think, can a cricketer ever tell me that, this is the technique that I'm using? Why am I doing this? Never would that happen. But that happened all the time in golf. And I was just so taken in by that. I said, okay, this is going to be my sport now. So that was around 1995, I think, when that happened.
Yeah, and it's actually quite funny you bring that up. I think with golfers, everyone started off, and I suppose it's like that in every sport, but I think golf, there's such a big learning curve that everyone has to go through. With cricket, I suppose, some people take to it quite quickly. There's not many, instruments involved. It's a bat and ball. Versus golf, there's a wedge, there's a driver, there's irons, there's so many other factors that the learning curve is much steeper. And I think that pros can relate to us, who aren't, necessarily equipped with the skills. And I think, they understand the struggle and they see that, everyone just wants to play better golf. And I think that's why we see this welcoming in, with the tips that you don't necessarily get in other sports. You don't find Ronaldo taking a journalist and saying, this is how I get the dip on a free kick, because that's kind of also sacred in terms of technique. There's some things that people just don't tell. But in golf, there's so much that you have to learn that, guys don't mind giving a tip here or there because they can see you need that little extra help. So that is quite nice to hear from your end that you felt that welcoming in from professionals nonetheless, guys who have made it to the top 1% of golfers in the world. You mentioned, you've been 95. It's a while back, just a year before my time, just a year. Obviously back then, media was very traditional in the sense of newspaper. That was kind of the main way of getting the news out. We find ourselves now in a world of, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and LinkedIn as well, if you want to throw that in the mix. As a journalist, what are What's your take on the way social media has evolved into such a pivotal tool for everyone on a daily basis, and how has it affected you as a journalist and the way you approach things?
Uh, well, it has affected a lot in the sense that I mean, I m- there are not that many newspapers and there are not that many news pages on sports now. So I mean, it in that way it has changed a lot already. I mean, when I was a cub reporter, we had so much to write, and I mean, so much space to write that. Now you can't really do that. I mean, people are not reading the newspapers that much. Okay, they're reading it on their tablets and other things. Um, the attention span has gone down. Is that the reason? Could be. I mean, I really don't subscribe to the fact that attention span has gone so down that you don't have time to follow something that you want to. So, for example, what I want to say is that if you want to know about COVID and what's happening, you will try to read about it. I mean, so it really depends on um, what kind of interests you have, and so if you are writing words as against something like a social media where it is not very important to have that many words, but to convey the emotions fast. Instagram, I don't think. I mean, my kids, I see they don't even read what's written. If you put up a good picture and you put up about 200 words below that, and they're not going to read that. They're just going to say, "Oh, nice picture," and that's it. So I mean, so it's just changed so much. Where words were like so revered at one point, maybe it is not at this point. But is that true? Not really. I mean, if you see the New York Times, if you see Washington Post, the kind of model that they are following, they do really great stories. I mean, people really like to read it. I mean, it's another matter that they do post on social media as well, the links and other things, but people are reading still. So it has changed a lot, yes. And what has become more important now is that you are social media savvy. That surely is the crux of what's happening in the media right now. But written word will always matter.
Yeah, and I think, when you bring up, the written word and how we perceive, words these days, like you mentioned, Instagram is, on the aesthetically pleasing side. It's more what the eye sees in terms of an image versus what no one's, very seldom will we click the read more on the caption. And I think, with social media gaining this importance in news as well, I mean, it's literally where everyone gets their news from. Um, how do you feel that, for instance, you as a journalist who's earned your stripes, you've been in the game for a very long time, will start competing with, for instance, not necessarily journalists, but influencers who are, reporting on events and things along those lines? How do you take to that competition? Because obviously they gain their following from being an influencer, not necessarily from being a journalist. So it's tough. Is it tough for you to kind of compete with that, or do you just do your own thing and not even look at it?
See, the thing is that if an influencer can, if an influencer knows his golf and is doing his stuff, his or her stuff. I mean, for example, I mean, one of the perhaps the best known name in golf social media right now is Paige Spirnak, and she is really good actually. I mean, she's not just good looking; she's actually a good golfer. She knows her stuff. So I mean, I really don't mind anybody like that. Well, if somebody comes in who can pitch in something like a 55-inch TV and they want to do something in golf, I don't mind again because I know that I'm better than them. I mean, they may have 50,000 followers who will look at that. But if somebody is really interested in the sport, which is what we as purists are there, I know that he or she is going to look at what I am posting and will gain far more um, insight and knowledge from my post rather than an influencer's post. So I'm quite okay with that. I mean, that's that's the fact of life right now.
Yeah, it's always. I mean, it's always interesting to hear. In my case with the photography and video side, here in South Africa, the in terms of the media side, it's very old still. I'm probably the youngest person who's capturing golf, and it's always interesting just to hear the voices in the room, with regards to the ease of access now, because now everyone can afford a good camera, whereas back call it 10 years ago, to get a sports camera was a 1DX and it was 100,000 rand, and now you can get a Sony that shoots better images than that for a quarter of the price. So it's almost like in some cases you always find like there's gatekeeping in certain spheres of media. So it's always interesting to hear from someone who's been at the top of golf stories, to hear your take on the new age in media. Firstly, I've seen on your
One thing I would say, Shan, just I like to add to it. I mean, one of the things that
Yes.
probably probably influences my opinion on this is because I was the media manager for the Indian after I left Indian Express. I was the media manager of the Indian PGA Tour for 7 years, 7 of the best years of my life, and at that time Indian golf was really booming, and I really welcome people. I mean, if suppose tomorrow somebody without a knowledge of golf wants to come to a tournament and I am the media manager, I will try to welcome that person and I'll try to teach him a few things. I mean, like for example, if there's a new photographer who has come to a tournament and he really doesn't know where to stand when a player is hitting the ball and things like that, I'll go and tell him that. But I would really love people to come, more young people to come and start covering the game. It doesn't. You don't only have to write about the sport. There are so many things that can be done with it. I mean, so social media, if any of the youngster comes and he just does 10 posts and puts some couple of nice pictures, that's also a contribution to the game. So, I mean, I'd welcome it anytime.
Yeah, I think, and that's sometimes where I feel there's a lot of work to do in this, in terms of golf specifically, because in general, golf is a hard to access sport from the standpoint of playing, and then to go into the working kind of area of golf, it's also hard to access. And if you haven't been in this in the inner circles and know the people, it's tough to actually feel comfortable and actually learn and progress. And I think what you mentioned is, I actually have a good mate who was a pivotal role in my photography career, and I was just doing a social media role at one of the events, and I had my camera, and this is only 4 years ago, so it's not even that long ago. And he kind of just gave me a few pointers, and from there I went to the world of YouTube. And I'll just mention Tyron Winfield, so guys can check him out. I'll leave his link below. But he kind of gave me a few tips that were very important for me at that moment, just to receive that, listen, someone who's been in the game for a while, do this, have the settings on this is what I do. And it just made that learning curve so much easier for me, and almost made me feel welcome. Whereas before, it's you kind of just tiptoeing and you're scared that you don't want to make an error. Obviously, because I knew golf and where not to stand, and I understood where that part of it. But it's the capturing that I didn't understand, and he took the time, like you would, and say, listen, this is the best way to do this, and put your camera on this setting and do this. And it's small things like that change the perspective on the way we perceive golf. I had the the view of a golfer from a golfing perspective, and not from the media role. And as I transition into this media role, things have changed in the way I see golf as well. And it's worrying at times, because I feel like we should be a bit more open to a few different voices, whereas now I feel like we're kind of just hearing from the same people over and over again. I don't know if that is that something that you feel as well, that we haven't been open to widening the voice that can be heard of golf.
I, I think you have got a point over there. Whether more people want to come in and become golf journalists, if that is the issue, whether more people are not coming in, or is it because the existing people are trying to protect their own territory? I don't think the second part is true. I mean, like, everyone knows. I mean, even if he is the correspondent of the Times or New York Times, he knows that there are only that many golf events he can cover. He's not sure whether he will have the job after 2 or 3 years. I think nobody is now trying to protect the territory as much as there are some of the old-time journalists who would rather have. So for example, I think you must have seen, there was this President's Cup where the Barstool video guys were giving high fives to players, and there was a little bit of controversy around that. Okay, an old-time journalist, and even I would count myself in that, I wouldn't really encourage somebody to just go and start fist pumping with players and things like that. Even, I mean, I can understand if he's a good friend of yours and you hug him after a tournament, and if he has won a tournament, but overt show of emotion as a journalist is something that was frowned in our day and age. We were brought up saying that you are not a fan. You have to be. I mean, you can be a fan of the sport, but you are not a fan of Jeev Milkha Singh going over there and just shouting at the top of your lungs. You have to still be very objective in what you are writing.
Yeah.
And that's what we were brought up on. So, and that is something that I would expect from any of the young journalists. I mean, there are times, especially in cricket, I've seen, when I'm still covering cricket, and during the World Cup and during matches in India, if I've covered them, that there are so many young, especially in television, and who are so just enamored, who are so overawed by the fact that they are getting to speak to somebody like a Sachin Tendulkar or a Virat Kohli, that you can see that he or she is slipping in his real job. I don't want that to happen to any of the journalists. I mean, I would rather have, I would teach anybody, I would encourage anybody, but I wouldn't like somebody getting so excited that he goes onto the 18th green and, do something. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is a thing that I found, because my journey in golf media it kind of escalated so quickly to a point where I went from a year of watching the NetBank Golf Challenge, guys on the driving range from a distance, and marveling at the swing of Nicholas Colsaerts and Henrik Stenson and all these players, and then within a 2-year span, I'm now shooting and interviewing some of these players at the SA Open and Joburg Open. And I would say that it does make a difference if you learn how to separate the fandom from your job, because then you, like you mentioned, you still have to be objective in the questions you ask and the stuff that you cover. And I found that now I'm not even that much of a fan of the game or of players per se, like directly of a certain player. Like, there's obviously a few players that I'm still very big on in terms of supporting and screaming for them, if you want to put it that way. But I find myself now, it's just part of the job. Like, you got to speak to Nicholas Hogyard, and those are just players, and that's just part of the job now. And I think what you mentioned is being objective is still very key in the work we do.
I mean, you know, I, I know that. I mean, if as a South African, if there is somebody like Charles or Louis, they are playing well, you would be excited. I mean, I am excited when Anirban or Shubhankar makes 5 birdies in a row or something like that. You just can't prevent that from happening. But
Yeah.
I mean, that has to show through your work as well. I mean, people should know that okay, you are a South African at heart. You are getting excited by your South African players. But as I said, I mean, there's a limit to which you can take that. You know.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And sometimes, and it's so funny now, like with the Solheim Cup that just passed last night, um, how the certain, like for instance, the no laying up guys that were there covering the event, and how they expected USA to lose. I think, I can't remember who tweeted, but someone tweeted, the USA is going to get slapped this evening, and he got so much backlash for it because they're asking, how can you be American and you're not cheering for America? And he was just being like, it's the facts, like this is just the way it is. So from that point of view, I think that's fair because he's looking at it objectively and he's being honest with himself. He's like, we're not in a position to win right now. Our players, it kind of feels like he actually, I'll find the tweet, but he actually used the words, it's cut from the same cloth from the Ryder Cup team, which for me was I almost took that as an insult myself to the team, the ladies team, because I feel like they're more, in sync with each other versus the men. Because the men, there's so much of this back and forth with, Brooks and Bryson, and that's obviously reached its peak. By the way, what was your take on the Brooks and Bryson and how media have kind of taken to that story, and it's obviously way past its due. It's basically expired now, but it's still being dragged along by the media as well.
And it will be because Ryder Cup is coming. And I mean, one thing I have to give to the European media pack, not many of them remaining actually, but they would really find out things about this and they will rake it out and they will bring it out again just before the tournament starts. So it's going to be there at least till the end of the Ryder Cup. But you know what? I think the PGA Tour's decision to throw out fans because they are shouting Brooksy at Bryson, I mean, so many things are being shouted at the players. I mean, these guys, I mean, if you really ask any of the players, they're most of the times they're used to things being said to them. It only bothers a player when somebody shouts right at when they're going on the downswing. Apart from that, I don't think any player ever, in case of Bryson, obviously because of what has happened with Brooks, he may feel a bit more about this, but otherwise players really don't. I mean, if you are a professional player and you get hassled by these kind of things, then it's really difficult for you to be a player. I mean, can you imagine what kind of things that are said to, I mean, I know the proximity is not that much in case of football field, but what kind of things are being said on a football field to players? I mean, you saw the European Championship and what happened to the English players. I mean, if you compare to what happened with all these guys, Marcus Rashford and other people, what happens in golf is nothing. I mean, it's really nothing. I mean, it's like somebody saying, "Hey, well played, Marcus." That's it. I mean, what's Brooksy compared to the kind of abuse that these three guys got after the European Championship?
Yeah, and I mean, also the fact that he himself said that he actually enjoys it. At one point, he actually said, "I don't mind it. You can call me Brooksy." So he also played his role in this, and I think that's what everyone is kind of saying. You also pulled at the string a bit yourself, and you benefited because You got more traction in the news. Your sponsors are happy. They're getting pictures posted. Like, you know, you're getting the attention. And I think, yeah, it's almost, it's a little, because there was times where Sergio used to get a lot of backlash and a lot of chants at him as well back. I mean, he has had plenty examples, especially in big time moments, because of his rivalry with Tiger and his little back and forth with Tiger that used to come in and post match comments or post round comments. And it's funny to see how, you know, now obviously it's an American, he's one of the best players, obviously. That's now taken, you know, the commissioner to come out and basically bring out this, you'll be thrown out if you mention this. So it is quite an interesting take on it all. Joy, we've obviously talked a lot about professional golf and you know, the media side, but from your perspective, what's your take on the status of golf? You know, there's this growing movement, and I've mentioned in the previous episode of the podcast with Dylan Naidu, there's this push to move towards a diverse, inclusive part of golf and to make golf a more welcoming sport in a sense. What's your take on that? Obviously, you very entrenched in Asian golf. What's, you know, from your perspective, how have you seen this move towards a diverse game?
Okay, so it's a very deep question. It needs to be thought out and detailed, but no, I still think there's a lot of the inclusivity is still not there, in the sense that if tomorrow there's a tour championship, and I can assure you that if there is a non-US or a non-European player who is winning the tour championship, there will be several articles saying that the tour championship is, I mean, it doesn't mean anything. It was not interesting. The television ratings dipped. Why would television rating dip if, say, I mean, for example, Hideki wins the tour championship? Why should it? I mean, did he not play good golf? So, I mean, it's just starting from there. I mean, you know, R&A about 3 years ago did this inclusion of women in golf, kind of, they put a charter together, and so that women are encouraged to play golf. Why do we still have to do this at this stage of, you know, when in 2019-20, if we have to tell people that, you know, women should be playing golf, why should we come to that point? So, I mean, for example, the PGA Tour or the European Tour, they have so many staff working over there. The European Tour goes to how many countries? I mean, I think 18 countries it used to go to at one point. I've not seen a single Indian staff on the European Tour. If they have a few staff in South Africa looking after just the South African tournaments, that's it. How many South Africans do you think, despite winning all the major championships and being such a big force in European Tour, how many South Africans are working at Wentworth, at the headquarters? I don't think so. I don't think even one. So all these talks of inclusivity is very nice, but there has to be the bigger tours have to do a lot more. I mean, in terms of making sure, I mean, okay, so for example, if the media says that the tournament was not that interesting because a Tiger or a Rory McIlroy did not win it, I mean, the tours can't stop it, but they can still do so much of promotion is being done all around. I mean, if European Tour is doing, say, hit that, like with they have done with a couple of players where you hit 100 shots and can you get a hole in one? Why can't they do it with a Thai player when a tournament is going on in Wentworth? Why should they have only British players doing that at that time? You know, have a Thai and a South African player hitting shots against each other at during that tournament. I mean, I can obviously they will try to do something with the Thai players when the tournament is in Thailand, or when the tournament is in South Africa, they will try to include South African players because that makes sense. But I want them to be doing more things when they are away and in their territory, so that these guys become more popular, more well known. You know. So,
Yeah. No, I'm with the same sentiment as well. It's all nice to mention inclusivity and being diverse and bringing up all these points, but without action, it's meaningless, and it's almost even more insulting in a way because it's like, okay, you want to do something, but then you're just saying it for, to save face, or just to put up a perception that something is going to be done. And I feel the same, when you mentioned the big tours, it's difficult to take what they say to heart when at the core of their functions, they are merely just one type of person. So whether they be, just white people or, and it's almost discouraging to work in the industry at times, where you look in and that's the picture you're seeing, to be honest, from me being a young person and seeing that, and it's almost a bit discouraging, if I'm being honest. And I see it here in South Africa as well. There's times where in the media center, I would be the only non-white person. And that's sad, because there are plenty of people who can be, filling up these roles as well. So I think it needs a lot of work, and it needs to start, obviously there's development programs in every country. In America, they're speaking on, all these different programs in place, and same here in South Africa. But also the main thing is to have the people who are seen at the highest, and the most prestigious tournaments, to also have that there. I mean, the Masters having that tribute with the first tee shots this past year, and you invite your 27, I think it was 20 or odd black professional golfers who are PGA approved and so on, have them at the tournament for that year. But I'm thinking, why isn't this happening every week? Why are we not seeing these people, that presence on a regular basis? Why is it only because there's a black person doing the tee off at the Masters, now we invite them? So it's this, we need a more we need a more I don't want to say serious approach. I just want a more genuine and authentic take to this inclusivity march that people are so keen to go on.
I would say don't get disheartened, if that was the word that you used, because there are so many good people in the sport, and you will find in the long run, I think you will really enjoy being a journalist, because you will be meeting so many amazing people. Having said that, yes, I agree with what you are saying, that there should be more done. And there has to be some kind of, for example, that the R&A doing about that women and golf charter, there was so much of intent in doing that. They put together so many programs. There are so many women playing golf in the UK and in Europe. After that, the number increased as well. That is the kind of, you just can't say that let's have inclusivity and just finish it. For example, the physically challenged golfers who are playing the EDGA, the Disabled Golfers Association, yes, when they have tournaments now with the European Tour. That's a great first step. But how can you now take this forward? Because there are only about 10 players or 12 players that they have who are playing. Now, can you bring some more of these disabled golfers during tournament? Can you make really good programs where you decide that, okay, we are doing this, with the EDGA. Let's now do something with every tournament, or you just pick up 10 tournaments where we bring in 10 or 12 of disabled golfers, and we interact with players, try to hit a shot, and do things like that. So there has to be more than just talking and doing something big for 1 or 2 weeks. I'd rather have something small being done almost every week. That will create more of a impact.
Yeah, and you mentioned that here the Sunshine Tour have been pretty good. Obviously with COVID, we've had to adjust accordingly and choose the safer role in this. But on a weekly basis, what was nice to see is that on the Wednesday we'd have a clinic where we'd have diverse groups of people coming and interacting with pros, and that was always nice to see. And the fact that it was a weekly thing made it more genuine. It's not like only when it's the SA Open or the Joburg Open that we bring this for the cameras.
Which is something I really don't like. I mean, because that's something. I mean, you look at a big tournament and you just want to do something around it, and then you forget it for the rest of the year. That is not. I mean, it is not a show that you want to put up for a few people. I mean, if you should really have good intent. I mean, if you want to show that grassroots the golf is developing, try to do it throughout the year. I mean, even if you can make 3 or 4 golfers out of the 40-50 odd kids that you get in. I mean, I'm just talking about Dubai DP World Tour Championship. Such a big tournament, a lot of things is done. There are so many tournaments, the sponsors involved. So you bring out kids and everything, and so for 1 week these kids are having a great time. They get to speak to Rory McIlroy and Paul Casey, and then after that what? Nothing. Instead, I mean, can't you just put a little bit of money from that program and just make sure that you have 4 or 5 camps with the local professional over here? And just, I mean, out of that 50 guys, that 50 little kids who are coming for the tournament, even if 2 or 3 become regular golfers and become good, that's more important, I think.
Yeah, and it's just that intent is so key. What's your intention behind this? That you're trying to put through, and with us being in the media side, we see through the smoke and mirrors. We know the intent and we can pick up on it. With you being so involved with Asian golf, how is that reception to Asian golf being taken across on the other side of the world? We've had for instance, in the Olympics just recently with Indians golfer Aditi. She obviously kind of shook the world, so it seemed, because it got quite a bit of attention, which was nice to see. And you've obviously had Shabankar Sharma, who's still, he had that great season where he was winning over here at the Joburg Open. How is it for you? Do you find that these stories of Asian golfers are being well received outside of Asia, or do you find that the audience is still very home based?
Okay, so the kind of stuff that Aditi did at the Olympics, I mean, it created because there was so much interest in India. I mean, people getting up at 4 a.m. in the morning and watching golf, it was unheard of. And so that really caught the attention of the world as well. And obviously, I mean, Aditi played so well. I mean, her putting was off the charts, really. I mean, I know people who were just watching that telecast just to see how she putts. There's a couple of guys who messaged me from US and all, who are watching the tournament, saying that I just want to get the process of her, the routine that she follows while putting. So, I mean, when something like that happens, I mean, there is obviously great interest. I mean, Shubhankar getting into the Masters, the getting an invite to go to the Masters, um, or say, Anirban Lahiri finishing fifth in the PGA Championship. Those are moments that need to be harnessed and taken forward. Is it creating a lot of ripple outside of Asia and outside of India? For that moment it does, if some player is playing well, but as I said, it has to be more. See, Asian Tour itself, I mean, the Asian golf itself is going through a really terrible time at the moment.
Yeah.
There have not been any tournament for past 18 months now, and you can imagine what the players are going through. Some of them who are professionals were just depending on that. So we is it what's the outside world doing for that? If that is what, I mean, if what the Asians have done so far, has it made an impact, and in Europe and in US, and if they are trying to do something for these players, I don't think so. I haven't seen any. I mean, have they tried to invite, say, 3 or 4 players from the Asian Tour who have not been able to play the top out of the top 10 to tournaments in Europe or US? No, nothing like that has been done. So obviously they also had a terrible time, and they want to look after their members, but no such move has been made. So I don't know. I mean, like, when something is when a Aditi Ashok happens, there's a lot of interest in India and in golf. Aditi Ashok, we need to somehow just keep carrying that story forward, and keep them in the. I mean, we also have got a responsibility to play in this, and more journalists need to be making sure, I mean, that Asian golf is talked about more than just I mean, then if there's a cricket match happening, let's not forget that there's something called golf.
Yeah. Yeah, that is an interesting point that, obviously, I mean, I don't even know how many events have been cancelled, but I can imagine quite a lot over the past 2 years in Asia. I mean, I don't even know what's the current status, to be honest.
After March 14, 2020, which was the Malaysian Open final day, no tournament has been played since then. So 18 months
Yeah.
now.
And I mean, there was actually times I actually enjoy watching the Asian swing, waking up. When I'm up, it's already halfway through. The days of play, and I actually enjoyed that stretch of golf. And it actually, I was thinking about it the other day. I actually was just thinking, because when I would watch, the names of Scott Hend, who does really well in Asia, and those kind of stories, I was just sitting and reflecting the other day and wondering, when is this gonna, what, I haven't heard of this stretch of events. And yeah, I think that's an interesting point that you bring up, that nothing's being done from the people who are resuming golf, to kind of get that, a little, even if it's like you mentioned, inviting the top 10 of the Order of Merit, or the top 5 or something. Something could be done, surely, because it is such an important part of golf as well. I mean, and your point of the stories of Aditi and, for instance, Matsuyama winning the Masters, it's almost like it gets hyped up because of the initial shockwave it sends to the home country. And it's nice to report, in India, 5 million people search golf because of Aditi at the Olympics. And once that fades away, it's almost like it's not a trending subject, so we don't cover it anymore. So that's that's the reception I get. It was nice when, with Japan, seeing Hideki put on the green jacket, and it was nice to for the American media to cover it from that angle, like, 10 million people watched Hideki win the Masters. But after it kind of just fades away, and we lose, sense of the gravity of that moment as well.
Yeah, true. So, I mean, and what the other tours should really, also realize is that Asian Tour and I'm not just talking Asian Tour. I mean, if we are talking of the two biggest tours, European Tour and the PGA Tour, they should realize that the South African Sunshine Tour, the Asian Tour, the Japan Tour, these are important part of the overall fabric of the game. Do you think, I mean, if there's nothing happening in Asia, is it good for golf in general? And I mean, then it will be a cocoon view, You will think that, in US, the number of rounds have gone up by 23%, and, I mean, the ratings have gone up. That's fine. But just imagine, I mean, you're losing out so many people who could have increased that number even further. So, and just see, I mean, like, you being from South Africa, you will really appreciate, I mean, how many South African golfers who have been to, say, Asian Tour and earned their living and done so well. I mean, Justin Harding is perhaps the best example I can give right now. I mean, he has just exploded onto the world golf because of, I mean, what he did on the Asian Tour. He won 3 tournaments on the Asian Tour. So, I mean, after that, I mean, he's all over the place. He's still playing so well. There are so many examples like this. I mean, J.B. Kruger was another example. I mean, what kind of people used to talk of him like the next Tiger Woods almost, It's a sad matter that he has not really, I mean, he's doing all right now again in Japan, but I mean, like, it's just, you need to have these kind of pockets in world golf to make it even more beautiful.
I agree, 100%. And for instance, another example, Sean Norris is, I mean, he's done more. He's really, it's almost like this is his second home. and he's applied his trade so well on the Japan Tour, and he's won, and he's earned a very good living. And obviously, this whole stop-start and not even starting anymore, with the Asian Tour has obviously affected everyone. And now, players are just unsure of, and it comes back to what I was saying to you before we started recording, and pursuing a career in pro golf is expensive. And the fact that you're not having events means you're sitting at home with no money, and you're literally just living on, maybe if you had a good season, you're probably just exhausting those funds now. So, and the guys who are lower on the order of merit are sitting at home thinking, is golf still for me? Do I go and find something else? Do I go back and finish varsity or college? So it's such a the ripple effect is so massive, and I think that's what we haven't really come to terms with from the acknowledgement from the bigger tours, is that ripple effect will show in the next few years that we won't have that few players or a big amount of players coming from those tours, because players will either not carry on, they'll have to build up that performance level again because they haven't been competing. So there's so many factors to really take in here. One of the last things I want to ask you is, what is the best story that you've written, or the best event that you've been at or covered, whether you have been there physically or remotely, either or?
Now, if one of the finest memory of mine is when I went to the US to cover golf for the first time. It was in 2002 US Open at Bethpage. No, actually 2001, sorry. That is 2001 when Jeev was invited to play. There was a tournament called the International in Denver. Very nice tournament, very well-loved tournament. It's no longer on the tour. It had modified stableford scoring. But 2002 was the US Open, was my first major, and I'm never going to forget it. Also because of the Sergio Garcia thing. I mean, he had that the stutter at the start of his swing, and the New York crowd gave him so much crap, Oof. And then everyone serenading Phil Mickelson because his birthday almost always falls during the US Open. So that was very nice. But my most favorite tournament, if you ask me, was the 2019 Masters. Because what did at that tournament, and I have grown up as somebody who was, from day one of my golf journalism day, Tiger Woods was like the most, should I say, well-known name. First of all, I mean, if in India at that time, I mean, because I had a little more knowledge than others, maybe I would talk about Fred Couples and Greg Norman. But anybody else you ask, and there was only one golfer's name which would come out, and that was Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
So to see him win after all those years and to get his 16th major was very special. That was, in fact, I mean, very few times you start tearing up as a journalist, but what Tiger had to go through and what happened over there, it was a moment just like that. I mean, you could actually feel it. You could feel your hair stand when he made that putt and he won. And as for the best story that I think I've written, I mean, it's as a journalist, what happens is that every time you write one story, if I write a story today, and if I come back to it after, say, 1 year, I would say, what crap I have written. I mean, I could have added so many things. Why did I start with that? So you think that you have not done a good job with whatever story you have done. But one story that always stands out for me is this golfer from Afghanistan who came to play the Asia Pacific Amateur Championship when it was held in China last year, 2019. And so we started talking, and it was such an amazing story that came out of it. Him talking about how the Kabul Golf Club is a 9-hole course where you can find a shell of bombs, you can find landmines, how he has got death threats because Americans used to play in that golf club, how he has tried to teach girls. I think that was one of the most interesting story that I did, and it came out pretty well as well. So I was very proud of that story.
Yeah, that does sound. Maybe I need to look that one up and give it a read, because that does sound, especially now. I mean, obviously there's quite a lot going on in Afghanistan with the recent turmoil, and yeah, those stories do kind of bring a little bit of hope, I guess, back into the world. And that's what's so special about sports, is that it allows those type of stories to come out and kind of reach people that, for instance, normal news wouldn't reach, and it's quite special, like you mentioned. And Joy, before I let you go, I mentioned at times I would feel kind of discouraged. What advice do you have for me, and then for younger people in media, from journalists to content creators to photographers? Because you've been around so many different almost generations, and it's not an insult in any way. It's more just a form of respect, that you've been able to, rub shoulders with the best, and you yourself as being one of the most recognized in the field as well. What advice do you have for us?
See, I think the first thing first, and this, I think everyone would say that, is to have a passion for what you're doing. And especially, so content creation is a very wide term, but in that, yeah. I mean, if there's someone like you who is passionate about golf and wants to create content, it will show, your content will be different. And it's kind of, opening a Twitter or an Instagram account. You will see that the first 100 followers are the most difficult to get. The next 900, you will still struggle. But after that, once people know you, that you provide good content, that number will keep on growing. So you got to have patience, first of all, and another very important thing is to have a style of your own. So I mean, it's not just creating videos in some way, but as I said, just to have that thing that, if someone wants to know about Shan, they know that, he's going to give us good golf content. If you can make that kind of specialization and that kind of a thing, it's going to be, players are going to recognize you. They will know that, you do good stuff. And obviously the last thing I would say, the fourth thing is that you got to, even if you are the best golfer, you are going to put in that many hours. You know that, isn't it? Even Tiger Woods, as world number one, was still beating the ball for 7-8 hours. He would still go to the gym, and it is very important that you read other people's work. You try to increase your knowledge, and that is the best way to grow, really. There are so many times that I've read something. I very recently, I'll give you an example. I was reading a novel by Raymond Chandler, and he's got a very, witty style of writing, and he writes, murder mysteries, and he was 1930s and a writer of that era. And I was reading that, and I was thinking that why can't I write a golf story like this? Can I bring something like what he has written into a golf story? Okay, I might not be able to write a book like him, but can I write a story when I'm talking about, say, somebody like who has got a swagger or something? Can I describe that golfer the way Raymond Chandler has done in his books? And so that's the kind of inspiration that you need to get. So those are the four things I would say, which I think if you have if you have all that four, you're going to just get better and better at your job, and you're going to enjoy it because you've got a passion for it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the main thing, is that first thing is the passion, I suppose, and that triggers everything else and allows you to grow and almost evolve as someone in your field. I think that's important to note. So I'll take that on board, Joy. I appreciate you and everything that you do, and I like your Twitter bio. Bringing the joy of golf. That's and your little hashtag as well. That's quite cool. I think you do that firstly, and you also amplify stories that need to be heard. So we have to thank you for everything you do for the golfing world.
Thank you, Shan. And it was a pleasure talking to you. And hopefully, once this thing gets off the air, this COVID thing, and if I come down to South Africa someday, let's have a round of golf together. I love South Africa, by the way. I went to the South African Open at Pearl Valley and had the best time of my life. Went for a family holiday in 2016, and my kids and my wife, we just enjoyed South Africa so much. Want to be there soon.
Yeah, I was actually speaking to, obviously, Lali Stander, and she was saying that and she was saying that you love South Africa. So I was going to bring that in. Where would you want to play golf right now? If you could play any golf course in South Africa, where would you tee it up?
I've heard so much about Ubai, the Ernie Els course, and I love Ernie Els to death. I've admired him so much, and his golf swing, and the kind of I don't know, because he sees me on the tour and he knows that I am an Indian. There used to be a time whenever I used to see Ernie, he would come and say, "So what's happening in the test match?" He's a cricket mad guy. So, you know, I mean, and he's a big fan of Rahul Dravid, and he would, every time he would tell me, if you meet Rahul Dravid, tell him, Ernie said he's the best batsman in the world. So, but, you know, and so Ubai is one that I really want to play because I've heard so many good things about it. And obviously, I mean, you guys have got so many amazing golf courses that, you know, I mean, like it would be Leopard's Creek. I mean, I don't know what to carry. Whether should I carry my clubs or should I carry my camera? You know, so many.
Lastly, you mentioned the camera. Obviously, on your social media, you post pictures now and again that you take yourself. What's your camera gear breakdown? What camera do you have, and what lenses?
Okay, I have a Canon. Which one is that? EOS 50D. I think that's the one. Yeah. See, the thing is that I'm not a very technical photographer. Okay, but somehow I think I've got a good eye for a composition. So, for example, I will like if somebody can see something nice happening over here and he wants to take picture from here, I would take picture from here, but I also want to take picture from right there. I mean, from the other side.
Yeah.
And that has helped me get some good pictures which have been appreciated. I mean, if David Cannon, who is like the guru of golf photography, he's like the god of golf photography. If he has complimented me 3-4 times,
you're on the right track.
That means I'm doing something right. I mean, I may not be able to give him say the best explanation about the exposure or depth of field or other things, but you know, I mean, he will tell me that, you know, that's a picture which has been taken properly. That's the thing, you know. I really enjoy that when I get a good picture.
And with that, Joy, I think when you do eventually make the trip down to South Africa, we'll play a round of golf, and then we'll also maybe cover a golf event. That would be nice to have you, and for one of the Sunshine Tour events, I think that would be quite special as well.
Absolutely. Leopard Creek, I'll come over there.
Okay. It's a deal. We'll pin that in the schedule and we'll make it happen.
Absolutely. Done.
Thanks, Joy. Thanks for your time and your insight into the world of golf. Always appreciate it, and keep on doing what you're doing, and we'll keep on reading.
Thanks, Shan. All the best, man. Have fun.